Let's talk football. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I realize football is kind of an odd topic for me to cover on this channel because my channel does tend to be a little bit more girly, and I've been talking a lot about like masculine, feminine energies, relationships, but football has honestly become such a pop culture thing right now, and a lot of relationship stuff going on, a lot of media stuff going on when it comes to football. So I actually wanted to touch on a few topics, some like celebrity relationships having to do with NFL players, and also just some of the pop culture and media phenomenon that is going on in the NFL, and also kind of how it can relate to you in your own personal life. I am going to touch on Taylor and Travis. I have a whole video talking about them if you want to check that out. And I am going to touch on Jason and Kylie and their relationship in this video. I'm going to do that a little bit later. So I am from New England, so I am a lifelong Patriots fan, and I'm a big Tom Brady fan. I have a video talking about Tom and Giselle. I'm clearly biased towards Tom Brady. If you want to know my thoughts on their relationship, you can watch that video. I found it really funny when I made the video about Taylor and Travis, and so many people came to that video and were like, you obviously don't understand football. And it's like, well, I'm from New England. I think I know a thing or two about football. But anyway, my video talking about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce was very controversial. I got a lot of love for it, but I also got a lot of hate for it. I actually had to delete a few videos from my TikTok because I was just getting like overrun with hate. The Swifties are hardcore, I gotta be honest. And it's ironic because like I never really said anything that negative about Taylor. No disrespect to Taylor, I respect her as a musician, I absolutely do. I'm a fan of her music. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a Swiftie because I feel like the Swifties have kind of lost their minds, but I understand people getting like really invested in her, and the fact that I think I was actually easy on her. The fact that so many people thought I was criticizing her was insane. I was much harder on Travis, although I stand by everything I said about Travis. As I said in that video, and I've said in other videos, like honestly, Taylor and Travis, whatever happens with them, like they're celebrities, they'll probably be fine. It worries me to see girls, especially young girls, defending Travis so desperately that it just makes me realize that there are still so many, especially young girls, that will fight so hard to defend a guy who has clear red flags. Whether or not you think Taylor and Travis are a good match is one thing, but Travis Kelce does have some serious red flags. And the fact that so many people are so hell-bent and angry to defend him, it concerns me because it just shows how many people, particularly women, are really oblivious to finding red flags. Since I made that video, everything that has come about when it comes to Taylor and Travis has only solidified my belief that this is a PR relationship. Now, are these two actually like hooking up and stuff? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I don't really know like how their personal interactions go. And honestly, nobody else does either. So like I have the same information that everybody else does. So if you start coming for me being like, you don't really know them, well, neither do you. So there's that. One thing that I think people really need to understand, because when people are like, they don't need the PR, every celebrity needs a PR. They just do. Like, do they need to be doing specifically this? Probably not. But every celebrity needs PR. And the fact that Taylor's time with Travis is lining up so perfectly with the time she's on break with her tour and her tour dates and stuff. Travis's PR team has even come out and said that they're trying to make him into the next The Rock. Like, they want him to be like superstar famous. The most popular way for any celebrity to move up into the next level of celebrity is to get into a high profile celebrity relationship. That is the tale as old as time. That's been going on since Hollywood was first invented. His PR people also said specifically that Taylor was not a PR relationship, which only convinces me that they're protesting too much. They may or may not be in an actual relationship, but what we are seeing publicly is absolutely cultivated and PR. None of it is accidental. None of it is just them being regular people, because they absolutely could fly under the radar. They absolutely could make this relationship private if they wanted to. They have the money, they have the resources, but the fact that they are so public is evident that this relationship is absolutely PR. Is it only that? Do they actually care about each other? I don't know. I don't really think they do, but maybe they do. I don't really know. But what we are seeing is absolutely cultivated to be PR for both of them and for the NFL. And I will tell you that the The primary reason why I'm so convinced that it's a PR relationship is because the NFL is doing too much. And this is not me being like, why are they showing Taylor again? I don't care how much they show Taylor. I really don't. But they're doing too much. They're making too big a deal about Taylor Swift going to their games. When Taylor went to her first game and the NFL actually changed their bio to Taylor was here, I was like, they're doing too much. Like, they're doing too much. Like, this has to be some kind of a deal. And the fact that most of Taylor's gigs, particularly here in the US, were all in major stadiums, most likely NFL stadiums, obviously that's for practicality because her tour was huge. I'm sure that there was some kind of a tie-in. There's a business deal here. I gotta be honest, I think the NFL took a hit with their viewership, I would guess because they went so political, because I don't think that their audience wanted politics mixed with their sports. Again, whatever your political views are, whatever your feelings about that, I think that the average football viewer did not want their sports teams getting so political. And I think Taylor is an option of dragging in people that's a new audience. She's like the country star that then became the pop star. She's got the highest grossing tour. She's bringing in a younger audience. She's getting girls in to watch. And it's interesting because it's very similar to the WWE, which I know is totally, they're in a whole mess now, so I'm not even gonna get into that. But the WWE created Total Divas, which was a show for E! And got a whole generation of women to start watching the WWE. I was one of them. So with the NFL, they get Taylor Swift, they get the Swifties to start watching the games, and it gets like dads excited to watch for their daughters, which I'll get into that issue in a minute. But it absolutely is a PR thing. Taylor is not dumb, and Taylor is not gonna let the NFL use her image like this if there's not some kind of a benefit there. What we are seeing is absolutely a cultivated PR relationship. Another thing that somebody pointed out, I've seen a few people point it out online, so this isn't my like original idea, but it is something that I want to emphasize because it did kind of hit home for me, is that there are a lot of dads who are coming forward and saying that they think it's so great that their daughters are interested in football now because it's something that they can share with their daughters. And that inherently is not a bad thing. Quality time, and I think it can be fun if you are really into football and your daughter now wants to learn about it because Taylor Swift is on the screen and you want to spend time teaching your daughter about football. Like, that's not inherently a bad thing, and I'm not saying it's negative. However, we have to be really careful of conditioning little girls to believe that the only way they can get a man, in this case their father, but men in general's attention, is if they basically cater to his interests. So if as a dad, you're like, oh, I finally get to spend time with my daughter because she's interested in the thing that I'm interested in now, it's fair to ask yourself, okay, but can I also make the time as a father to show interest in something that she's interested in so that she learns it's a two-way street? Because too often we have young girls, I experienced this growing up, we have to have our father's interest in order to get our father's attention. It's a really bad generational pattern that gets passed down, and it conditions girls to think that they have to change themselves in order to accommodate their partner. Because young girls learn like, okay, I have to be interested in what my father's interested in order to get male attention. And then they grow up now conforming their ideas, their interests, their thoughts into what a man's interested in. And that's where you find women that lose themselves in relationships. And then they wake up one day, realize they've lost themselves, and then they decide to walk away from the relationship. And the guy's like, I'm blindsided. It's like, well, it's because she was just accommodating men for attention. It's like you're literally raising little pick-me's. So I'm not saying that it's inherently a bad thing that young girls get interested in football. I learned about football because I wanted to start paying attention to it and learned a lot of it from watching it with my dad. So like, I'm not criticizing that. So if you are a woman who has kind of grown up like, oh yeah, I really had to conform to my father's interests in order to get his attention, and I find myself now as an adult always conforming to a man's interests just to get his attention, like that's a pattern that you really want to take a look at. And I think if there are any men listening and there are any fathers listening, I'm not saying it's inherently bad for you to want your kids, boys or girls, to get interested in the things that you're interested in. But you also want to make sure that you are letting them know that they don't have to be interested in the same things as you, and that you will still give them love and attention if they are interested in something else. And it's also good to take the time to also show some interest in the things that your kids, particularly your daughters in this case, are interested in. So it's not inherently a bad thing, but I think it's something that we need to be more aware of. Can I just say, I also find it really ironic. It's so crazy in our society, and it's amazing how many people just don't see it and will just deny that it's true. But we absolutely support things that men are interested in, no matter how rabid a fan they are. With men, it's considered appropriate, but if women are fanatically interested in something, it becomes wrong. Like, the fact that we've seen so many men judgmental of like women getting dressed up to go to Taylor Swift concerts, or women wearing pink and going to the Barbie movie, but yet men will literally dress up in like football uniforms and go to a sports game with like their face painted in like the sports team, and will cry when their team loses or something, like all this stuff. It's like, well, that's acceptable. It's acceptable for men to be like this. But like if a girl, I don't know, gets dressed up to go to a Taylor Swift concert and she cries when she sees Taylor Swift, it's like that's considered inappropriate, or that's considered weird, or like that's something she should be judged for. I'm not saying that this is a universal thing, but I see it a lot where in our society, things that women are interested in get shamed by men. Things that men are interested in, even if they're like rabid, insane fans of, it becomes acceptable. Which actually is actually a tangent I wasn't planning on talking about, but I did actually see this topic come up where there were women that were talking about how they hated when men asked them, like either on a date or like on a dating app or something, like what their hobbies were. They hated that question. And there were a lot of guys who were like, I don't understand why that's a weird question. Like, it's just us getting to know you. And on the surface, I'm like, yeah, that is weird that women wouldn't like that question. However, it is much more taboo for a woman to have a hobby than it is for a man to have a hobby in our society. And I commented that somewhere, and all these guys were like, that makes no sense. Because if you think about it, like for most women, their hobby tends to be like self-maintenance. Like they're like, oh, I get my nails done, which isn't really a hobby, because most women are doing that because they feel like they have to, or like getting their hair done or something. Like most women are doing that because they feel like they have to in order to maintain a certain image. So like that's really self-maintenance as opposed to like a hobby. Whereas women's hobbies are considered frivolous unless they serve a certain purpose. Like unless they make a woman look better, or unless they are, you know, cooking or sewing or something. So it's something that's like they're doing for somebody else. In our society, we tend to see women's hobbies as being very selfish, and men's hobbies, no matter how frivolous, tend to be considered like, oh, he just needs that because he needs to relax. Like we don't think anything of a guy like spending an entire Saturday on the golf course and then spending Sundays watching football. But like for a woman, if her hobbies don't consist of cooking for her family or maintaining her physical appearance, they're considered selfish. Like if it doesn't directly have to do with taking care of somebody else, there's a weird judgment there. So I kind of understand, as much as I don't think that women should be offended or bothered by a guy asking what her hobbies are, because I do really think that genuinely that tends to come from a place of, he just wants to get to know you. That said, there's so much shame that is deeply ingrained in women for having a hobby that isn't based on like either maintaining your appearance, which is really for other people, or doing something for somebody else. Women are absolutely shamed. I mean, I'm not saying that the man asking the question is specifically shaming a woman, but most women are conditioned to feel deep shame for having a hobby. And I think that's where some of the trigger is coming from, of women being like, well, why is he asking me my hobby? Because I think women feel shame in that area. I will tell you, when I did the dating apps, I was like, if I see another guy who just like his entire profile is hobbies, it's like, I like to fish, I like to boat, I like to ski. I'm like, honestly, if I see a man that has too many hobbies, I'm like, red flag. I'm like, you're doing too many things that don't involve you actually making money and being a provider. I see a man who has too many hobbies to be an absolute red flag. It shows that he doesn't have a true purpose in life. I'm just gonna say it, women are designed to have hobbies, men are not designed to have hobbies. But in our society right now, we support men's hobbies and we shame women's hobbies. That's a whole other tangent, but like I just had to go there because it's something that I feel really strongly about, and I guess it does kind of relate to football a little bit. But getting back to football and the Taylor Travis thing, and I want to make a note about, I really think we owe Jessica Simpson an apology. I'm not saying everybody did this, but if those of you that are old enough to remember when Jessica Simpson was dating Tony Romo and he started playing badly, and like she was almost like banned from Texas, which is like her home state, because everybody blamed her. And now, like if Travis has an off game or something, everybody was blaming Taylor and people were defending her, and I was just like, okay, where was that energy when everybody was like bashing Jessica Simpson, right? Like, I'm glad that people are starting to stand up and say, no, we're not going to blame women for things that are men's responsibility, but also, like, we do kind of owe the women in the past that's happened to an apology, but that's beside the point. The problem with that is, and like Pat Mahomes, who, if you don't know, is the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs and is like best buds with Travis Kelce, did an interview, and I gotta be honest, the interview felt very, like, he was being very careful about what he said. I think it was very coached. Not a judgment, but it just felt very like he was trying to be very careful with his words. And in this interview, Pat Mahomes did say Taylor is part of the team, or Taylor's a member of the team, or something like that. I realized he was saying it to kind of be like, oh yeah, she's like, you know, supportive part of the team. However, it does feel weird that a girlfriend of one of the players, not even a wife, but a girlfriend of one of the players is somehow part of the team. Like, it was odd to me. Like, it really stood out. And that was actually, like, kind of just before, I think, like, the Chiefs had kind of an off game and people were starting to blame Taylor for that. And people were like, you can't blame Taylor. And I'm like, well, I agree you should not blame Taylor for anything that Travis does on the field, because that's his job and his responsibility. However, if you're gonna start saying things like Taylor is a part of the team and she's like a member of the team and everything, she's gonna get criticism when the team doesn't do as well. You kind of set yourself up for that. Like, even some of the promos that they've been doing for, you know, the NFL and things like that, and like using her image, and it's like, well, it really does feel like they're kind of setting it up like she's one of the players or one of the team. And then if they do poorly, when they're like, well, she's not a part of it, it's like, well, you made her part of it. And so when she gets criticized, you guys are kind of dragging her into this. And again, I do believe that this whole thing is, you know, all a contract PR deal and stuff. But like, I do think that you need to be mindful. Like, I don't think we should be blaming Taylor at all. But like, it is strange to me that you've got like players in the NFL and, oh, she's part of the team. It's like, she's one of the players' girlfriends. She's not part of the team. Like, that's strange, because you're not even saying that about some of the players' wives. There was also a lot of controversy around the fact that they were showing Eminem at the Detroit Lions game and they were showing Taylor Swift at the Kansas City Chiefs game. And there were a lot of people that are like, why aren't people more upset about them showing Eminem than they are about showing Taylor Swift? And I actually think this is kind of an interesting thing to look at, because, okay, I'm gonna say, I do absolutely believe it that them showing Eminem was probably also, it was definitely a contracted deal, I'm sure. Like, I'm sure that if he wanted to go to the games and watch the games and fly under the radar, he could have done that. He's a much more private person than Taylor is, generally speaking, but he also did some promos for the Detroit Lions and things like that. So he has performed at the Super Bowl before. So I'm sure that him being shown at the games and stuff was probably something that he agreed to. Celebrities and their teams, they're very protective of their images and they're very strategic about their images. So I'm sure that showing Eminem was probably also a contracted thing. Like, he probably gave them approval to be showing him as much as they did, because again, he did some promos with the Detroit Lions and stuff. So I'm sure that it was all a PR thing, as much as I'm sure that Taylor being shown at the games was PR. And them showing celebrities at the games is nothing new. I will point out that when Tom Brady started dating Giselle, because I was watching football a lot at that time, Giselle was the highest paid supermodel in the business at that time, and they barely showed her at games. And them dating was a pretty big deal, and they really did not show her that much. I will say there is a slight difference between them showing Eminem and them showing Taylor Swift. One of the things is that when you have someone like Eminem being one of the most famous celebrities from Detroit, and he is supporting the Detroit team and has also been a lifelong fan of the team, it does seem like a more compatible collaboration. Like, it makes more sense. Whereas somebody like Taylor Swift, who has really nothing to do with Kansas City other than the fact that she's dating one of the players, and her appeal is not necessarily to NFL fans as much as, say, Eminem's appeal is. I don't know if it was last year's Super Bowl or another game like from last season about like them showing LeBron a lot. Well, LeBron's an athlete, so his audience would be similar to the people watching the game. So Some of it does suit the audience more. I don't think somebody like Eminem was being shown necessarily to bring in a new audience, whereas Taylor Swift was obviously there to bring in a new audience. One thing I will say is I'm noticing that a lot of people who are starting to watch football because of Taylor Swift don't understand football culture all that much, so they jump to a lot of conclusions. And like when Taylor Swift went to New England, when Travis played the Patriots, and she was shown wearing a Kansas City jersey, shirt, I don't know what she was wearing. She was wearing Kansas City colors and cheering for Kansas City, the Patriots fans booed her. Now, this is another reason why I think that this was PR, because then Travis went and tweeted that that was inappropriate and everybody flipped out, like how dare they boo Taylor Swift. I don't think people understand football culture in that they probably weren't booing Taylor Swift. Some of them might have been, but generally speaking, they were probably booing the fact that she was wearing the opposing team's jersey. That's part of football. Part of football is you boo the opposite team, right? Like, because you are competing, it's a competition. Now, I don't love all the things with football culture or sports culture in general. I mean, I come from a place where like they will chant Yankees suck at a Red Sox game no matter what team the Red Sox are playing. I used to date a guy that wore a Yankees sucks t-shirt all the time, and it was humiliating because we'd walk into a place and everyone would be like, yeah, Yankees suck, and like I hated it. Like, I'm not a fan of that stuff, but like that's what sports teams are, is like that's kind of the energy around it. So Taylor Swift wearing a Kansas City jersey or shirt or logo or something was more likely the reason why they were booing. Not necessarily they were booing Taylor Swift. Now, were some people booing her? Maybe, I don't know, but probably not. And the fact that Travis was so quick to kind of get upset that they were booing her, I'm like, Travis knows. Like, Travis knows why they were booing her. Travis knows the culture of booing the celebrity that is rooting for the opposite team. That to me just fed into the whole storyline. Like, they were trying to make it seem like the Patriots fans were like fighting against Taylor, and it's like, no, she was wearing the opposite team's jersey like in the home field. Like, it probably was not meant to be malicious. Now, I get if you're not into that culture, I understand, but I also think it's really important to understand that that's the culture of football. You may not like it. I mean, I'm not a fan of it. I've never been a fan of that whole, like, you know, being in a Red Sox stadium and chanting Yankees suck. The first time I went to a Red Sox game, I was like, what in the world are they doing? Why are they chanting Yankees suck? Like, we're not playing the Yankees. It's not my thing, but that's part of the culture. Now, you can argue with the culture, but I think it's also important to understand it before you jump to the conclusion of like why people are doing what they're doing. I also want to point out though, and this is like really super important because this stood out to me, and I really think this is such a great example of media manipulation and the way that you need the full context of things. So I saw a lot of people that were saying like, why was everybody upset about Taylor Swift being shown a lot, but they weren't upset about Eminem getting shown so much? And he was literally flipping off San Francisco 49ers fans at the NFC playoff game. And I saw some of the photos of him like in the skybox flipping off people, and it looked like he was like angrily flipping off people in the still photo. But then I saw the video of that, and what was actually happening was like he was in the skybox and they were like some 49ers fans. Like, there was one in particular who was kind of like this big guy who had like the beer headset thing on, and he was like obviously one of those super fans, and the two of them were kind of like flipping each other off, but they were like laughing about it, and it was obviously meant to be something like funny. Now, you don't necessarily have to think that's funny or think that that's classy or anything, like whatever you think about that, but like the still photo made it look like he was just like angrily flipping off these fans, like he was like pissed off at everybody, whereas when you watch the video you were like, oh, this was literally just like playful like trash talk banter. It wasn't meant to be taken that seriously. And the reason why I point that out is because I just want people to realize that you can take a lot of these things out of context and you can actually manipulate almost anything to make it look a certain way. And I just hope that that wakes people up to realize that what we are being sold is not always what's actually happening. If you learn nothing else from this video, I hope that you learn that everything is being manipulated to look a certain way. Do I think the NFL is rigged? Yeah. I've kind of always thought that it was. And I say this as somebody who also wants to believe that Tom Brady is the greatest person that has ever held a football. I've talked about this in other videos, and I'm going to do another video in more depth about addiction and relationships and stuff because it's a really important topic. But I really do believe that the next wave of addictions that we're gonna see that are gonna start destroying people's lives is gambling. Sports betting is legal now. It's always been going on, but now that it's legal, you're seeing rampant advertising for it, and it's becoming so much more normalized. We're about to see a major wave of gambling addictions that are going to start destroying people's lives. I already think there's a whole long list of addictions that are absolutely destroying people, and I'm gonna do a whole video talking about that, so I'm not gonna dive into that too much here. But we have been normalizing gambling addiction for a very long time, and now that it is so legalized and being pushed and glamorized, and I absolutely do not believe for 1 second that these powerful companies that are running this sports gambling are just leaving things up to chance in any way. I don't believe that. Whether you believe that Kansas City is in the Super Bowl because it's good for ratings, because of Taylor Swift, you know, whatever. Maybe you believe that, maybe you don't, I don't know. However, I do not believe for 1 second that the powerful organizations that are running these, you know, gambling rings or organizations or whatever you want to call them are leaving these games just up to the chance of the players. I absolutely believe that there is something else going on there. When they say it's scripted, I don't believe that it's actually a script. One of the things that I did actually read recently was the Bella Twins book talking about being in the WWE. Again, I know the WWE is a lot of controversy right now, so I'm not going to dive into that. But one of the things that they pointed out was that the actual matches in the WWE, which we all know are, like, we know the ending is scripted. There's like a winner that's predetermined, and because it's sports entertainment, it's not an actual competition. And typically, like, how they're going to win is prearranged. But the actual match itself tends to be very improvised. You have wrestlers who have been practicing with each other a lot, so they get to know each other's bodies, they get to know each other's cues, and they very much have to be in the moment in order to have safety and to be okay. They have to have good communication skills with each other. The actual match itself is very improvised. However, the outcome is predetermined, and I don't think it's that far a stretch to think that the NFL may be doing the same thing. So like the individual moves, the individual plays that are happening in the game could not necessarily be a scripted thing. Like, it's not like, oh, this guy is gonna throw to this person and this person's gonna catch it this way, and like these things may not necessarily be scripted, but the overall outcome of what's supposed to happen is probably pretty likely scripted. And I'm gonna throw out a conspiracy theory. If you guys are not fans of conspiracy theories, then you can either ignore this or not, or maybe this might get you into conspiracy theories. But I have a conspiracy theory, which I realize the NFL and beauty trends, I know is kind of an odd combination, but I've seen so much online about like the fact that the clean girl aesthetic is out and the mob wife aesthetic is in. Now, the clean girl aesthetic, if you're not familiar with that, is actually basically like minimal makeup, although ironically it's not actually clean because you're typically filling your face with like fillers and Botox so that you don't need makeup, but you're making your face into literally like a Instagram filter, filling it with all kinds of toxic chemicals to make yourself look clean. But that aesthetic is moving out, and the mob wife aesthetic is coming in, which the mob wife aesthetic is kind of like this very like New Jersey Italian style with like leopard prints and fur and like a lot more makeup and that kind of like edgy sort of like, again, New Jersey Italian glam. Now, I'm all for that kind of like Jersey-licious aesthetic, like the animal prints and a lot of makeup and stuff like that. Like, I love that. Like, the bigger the hair, the closer to heaven. Like, I'm all for that. Like, I love that look. But notice they're calling it the mob wife aesthetic, which is interesting because there's so many other options that you could call it. I mean, you could call it the sort of like New Jersey Licious. There was a TV show called Jersey Licious about a New Jersey hair salon that I used to love. So I'm thinking Jersey Licious, but like you could call it that, or you could call it kind of like, I don't know, Italian American something or other. I mean, you could call it so many other things. The fact that they chose to call it mob wife aesthetic, I believe that what they're doing is they're trying to normalize and glamorize organized crime. Now, if you think about it, who is suspected to be behind most of the sports gambling in our culture? Organized crime. I'm pretty sure there's actually like some either current or former mobsters that have basically come out and said that they had NFL games fixed. Now, I know some people are gonna say that's legit, some people say it's not, I don't know. But the fact that gambling is becoming sort of like the new trendy addiction and we're also glamorizing the mob wife aesthetic and calling it that, I don't think is a coincidence. I absolutely believe that we're gonna start normalizing that. And in fact, in the early 2000s, there was actually like a whole, like there was like, I think there was actually a show called Mob Wives. There was like that Growing Up Gotti, like there was a real push to glamorize the people associated with organized crime. And I think we're kind of seeing that again. And the fact that sports gambling and sports betting and stuff is becoming such a big industry, I don't think that's a coincidence. I absolutely think we're trying to normalize it in our society. I know that's a whole like tangent, and the fact that like the whole like fashion aesthetic and the NFL is actually tied together. I know some people are gonna be like, that's weird, but I really do think that there's a connection there. For sure. I'm very anti-gambling. I'm not saying you shouldn't watch sports if you want to watch sports, whether it's real, whether it's fake, whether it's whatever. I used to watch a WWE. I know they've got some issues now. I haven't watched it in a while, but like I used to watch that even though I knew it was scripted and I knew it was kind of theatrical. I used to enjoy watching it. So I'm not criticizing it. Like I wouldn't necessarily never watch a football game again if I thought that it was scripted. And honestly, what the actual like mob wife aesthetic is, I actually think it's a cute look. I mean, I like the idea of like, hey, let's like start wearing more glam makeup again, and like let's make big jewelry and leopard print and that kind of stuff. Like let's make that popular again. Go for it. I just think we need to be aware of the terminology and what we're being sold in the media. So let's talk Jason and Kylie Kelce. They are sort of the media darlings right now. They're kind of being touted as this ideal couple, and I get why, because they are a very relatable couple. I want to state, for starters, if you guys are hardcore Kylie and Jason fans, I'm not making this video at all to insult them or criticize them in any way. I don't think that they're bad people. They both feel like very genuine people. They feel very much like what you see is what you get, which I absolutely love and respect about the two of them. And again, I do think that their relationship does feel very relatable to a lot of people. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people are putting their relationship up on a pedestal, and I think it is setting up a precedent that I think could be very unhealthy for a lot of people. So I want to point some of those things out. Now, for starters, I think Kylie's great. I think Kylie seems very real, very genuine. I don't know her, obviously, but she comes across very real and genuine. I love that she's a natural beauty. I love that she's not one of these, you know, women that is trying so hard to be, you know, face-tuned and everything, that she's just kind of like a natural girly. Now, when I say that, I don't love the fact that we pit the natural girlies and the glam girlies against each other. So I love that we're embracing Kylie's natural beauty, but I hate the fact that they're always like kind of like putting her and Taylor or something. Like when they met at the Bills game, it was always like Taylor's outfit versus Kylie's outfit and this and that, and everyone was comparing the two. I wish we could just be done with the whole like who are better or comparing people's outfits or something. Like Kylie is who Kylie is and Taylor is who Taylor is. I don't think Taylor showing up to a football game being in like high fashion glam is bad. And I also don't think Kylie showing up as like, she's just kind of like a natural girly and, you know, wants to be comfortable and casual. I don't think that's bad either. I would love to see us finally just celebrate if a woman wants to be like full on glam or a woman wants to be sort of like natural casual. Like just celebrate both of those. Like celebrate both of those things. I'm gonna do a video talking a little bit more about how we condition people to be sort of like fake and natural versus fake and stuff like that. So I'm not gonna dive into this too much here, but I love that we're celebrating Kylie's natural beauty, but I also don't want it to become that that's the only acceptable type of beauty. Like I think that all kinds of beauty can be acceptable. And I think, you know, girls who want to be more high fashion and high glam, I think that's cool too. And I think if you want to be a natural beauty, you can be great that way too. Like I would love to see us as a society embrace both. And one of the criticisms that I have about a lot of Kylie Kelce supporters, and this is not knocking Kylie, by the way, because I absolutely believe she's just being herself and she's being very genuine. So I'm not knocking her. This is actually a lot of people that are her supporters, that it's a common phrase that I hear people say a lot when they're supporting her is, she seems like she's with Jason for the right reasons. And that I think is dangerous, because what the message that it's sending is, because she's more of a private person, because she's more low-key, because she's not somebody who obviously is spending a ton of time on glam, because she doesn't tend to live a really like luxury lifestyle, that makes her more devoted to her husband than a woman that might be doing otherwise. Because what's implied by saying that she's obviously with her husband for the right reasons implies that if a woman was different than her, then she would automatically be with her husband for the wrong reasons. And also, like, we never really seem very concerned with if a man is with a woman for the right reasons, but yet we seem very concerned with whether a woman is with a man for the right reasons. The right reason being that he makes very good money so he can provide a great lifestyle for his family. That seems like a pretty good reason. The fact that she's not drawn towards a more like luxury, high profile life is simply her personality. But a woman who may want to live a more glam, over the top life doesn't necessarily mean that she's with a man who's a provider for the wrong reasons. And I think that that's where we have to be really careful, because again, I love seeing the support of Kylie, and I love seeing, because I do think she seems like a very genuine person. I think she seems like a great role model, but I think we have to be very mindful that in supporting her and celebrating her, we don't then turn around and give backhanded insults to women who aren't like her, because in reality, as women, there's room for everybody. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that because she just happens to be a more laid-back person who doesn't seem to be into that much luxury, it doesn't mean that she's necessarily more devoted to her husband than a woman who might have different tastes or a different personality type or something. And again, not knocking Kylie at all. I just think we need to be careful of not pitting women against each other. Like, it's conditioning women to have to prove that they're with their husband for the right reasons by not actually taking full advantage of what he brings to the relationship. Like, it's only considered her being there for the right reasons if she lives a more low-key lifestyle. It's like, it's almost as if there's this implication that if Jason lost all his money, Kylie staying with him and suffering by him would be her proving her love for him. Whereas if she, like, say gained 100 pounds and he stayed by her, like, every guy specifically on the planet, and probably even some women, would be like, oh my God, this poor guy is suffering with this woman who's gained 100 pounds or something. Look at Pierce Brosnan and his wife and how much criticism he gets, or she gets. They act as if he's so miserable being with this wife that has gained weight. And it's like, we're supposed to feel bad for him somehow. But yet a woman would be required to stand by a man's side and suffer along with him to prove that she's with him for the right reasons. I really want us to be more careful about the messages we send in society. I do think she's a great role model, and I think she did an interview recently where she was talking about being really conscious about how she talks about her body and her body image in front of her girls, because she knows, you know, what a important influence that's going to be on them. And I think it's a great message. Like, I'm a big fan of hers. I mean, I'm speaking to women because as women we need to set the example. We can't really expect men to treat women with more respect if we as women are treating each other with disrespect that way. I do know one thing that I did read when I was trying to do some research about Kylie's family was that Jason has said that Kylie has a great support system, so that when he's on the road and he's not around as much, she's not just on her own. And I think it's really great that, at least publicly, that he's basically saying like, hey, I'm not just going off and doing my thing and like leaving her without a support system, you know, with 3 kids. And I do think that's important, and I really love that they are a representation of the fact that it takes a village. You know what I mean? It's not just about the parents, it's about like the whole community and the whole family. And I think that's a really great representation. And if their popularity brings us anything, I hope it's that. But let's get to Jason. Jason is an oldest child, obviously. He's Travis's older brother. And it's really interesting because he has this strange like dichotomy about, like, he's obviously very protective of his younger brother. And I actually was reading a lot of stuff about how like Travis is kind of gone off the rails quite a few times, and Jason has been the one to get him back on track, which, as crazy as I hear Jason actually is, makes you wonder like how bad Travis actually is, that Jason's the one that's getting Travis back on track. I'm not knocking Jason, okay, at all. He's a very entertaining character. He doesn't seem like a bad person. I don't think he doesn't seem malicious in any way. I absolutely believe that Travis is an opportunist. I don't necessarily think that Jason comes across that way. I think he's very entertaining. I think he's very funny. Jason at the Buffalo Bills game. This was the game, if any of you aren't familiar, where he was like ripping his shirt off. He was drunk. He was, you know, jumping out of the skybox and stuff like that. And women were going crazy. Now, on the one hand, I get it, okay? Because, you know, like Jason is he's that like, you know, I need a big boy, you know what I mean? I think oftentimes like men think that women want the guy with like the ripped muscles and stuff, and he's kind of like the big, like somebody described him online as like he's like a bass fisherman that just like showed up to play football or something like that. Like he's just kind of like a big dude, and I think a lot of women find that very appealing. I get it. But so many women have been now comparing Travis and Jason. Now, Travis is like Mr. Fashionista. Even his mom basically said like she was basically with the daughter he never had. That's not manly. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people got mad at me in my video about Taylor and Travis. A man who is too obsessed with fashion, style, color, stuff like that, that's not a masculine energy. So I'm really leery of guys that are too fashion conscious. Straight guys that are too fashion conscious, because it's a warning sign to me. I think it's a big red flag. Feminine energy is about seeking attention and to be seen and to be witnessed. So if a man is dressing in a very like fashion conscious, like attention getting way, he's in his feminine energy. On the flip side, when you have somebody like Jason who's like, I'm gonna rip my shirt off, I'm gonna get drunk, and I'm gonna be loud and be the center of attention, that is also feminine energy. A man cannot be in his masculine energy while he's intoxicated, because masculine energy is consciousness. So if you are under the influence of any kind of substance, you are not in your masculine energy. If you are trying to be seen, be witnessed, take all the attention, you're in your feminine energy. And the thing is that so many women were looking at Jason at that game and like, oh, that's the manly man that I want, because he does have like that manly physique and he's got the beard and everything. Like he has that sort of manly look. So I get that, because I think that like Travis dresses like him and Taylor switched outfits and clothes and stuff like that. Whereas I get that like Jason has that more like kind of traditional, like kind of like mountain man kind of a look to him. That kind of intoxication, a man who's willing to get that drunk, for a man that size to get drunk means he probably had a lot of alcohol. And to be that erratic, again, it was very entertaining to watch. However, that is not a man embodying his masculine energy. Now, as I said in the Taylor Travis video, most pro athletes are not embodying their masculine energy. Do they need to have some masculine skills in order to play a sport because it is a competition and they tend to be very competitive? Yes, there needs to be aspects to their personality that are very masculine, and most of them probably are masculine at their core. But usually men at that kind of level of pro athletics tend to be coddled in the rest of their life. Like there's like the competition in the game, but then they tend to never have to grow up because they get put up on pedestals. Hence Simone Biles and her husband thinking that he's the prize. They tend to be put up on pedestals and think that they're the trophy, which the feminine is actually the prize. Most male pro athletes are not going to be embodying their masculine energy. I'm not saying it's universal, and I'm not saying that they don't ever exist in their masculine. But when I saw what was going on with Jason, and I was just sort of like, yeah, it's funny, it's entertaining, I get that. However, I was just like, oh my God, poor Kylie. And I get that she gets to benefit a lot from him being very financially successful and everything. But the fact that the conversation was that she told him to be on his best behavior leads me to believe that there's definitely like a mother-child aspect to their relationship, which is very common, which is probably why they're so relatable. And there's a lot of couples who stay together for a long time in that dynamic, but that is usually going to be a very difficult dynamic for people to be in long term. It tends to kill the sexual polarity. I mean, they have 3 kids, so they've got something going on, but in the fact that the conversation was like, I'm not asking your permission, I'm giving you a heads up. That kind of erratic behavior is going to make a woman feel more guarded. So I almost wonder, I know she's a private person, I know she's not someone who wants to be in the spotlight, but I also wonder sometimes if one of the reasons why she's like that is because she doesn't necessarily feel safe to let her guard down, because she feels like she has to be the mother in that situation, in that dynamic. As much as, again, it was fun, it was entertaining, like I'm not criticizing him for it, that behavior, so many women are putting that behavior and him acting like that like up on a pedestal. If you find that behavior attractive, it's probably because you are used to a dynamic where you have to mother a man who is like essentially a grown man child. Very common dynamic nowadays. In fact, most women nowadays probably, you know, if you grew up with a father figure in the house, a lot of women grew up with a father figure like that in the house. I have to admit, at first I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then I was like, oh, that's my old trauma coming up. Because I realized, like, if I was Kylie in that situation, like I have been Kylie in that situation, obviously not like with cameras on and that high profile, but like I've been her in that kind of a relationship dynamic. I know she was probably like on edge. Like she didn't get to really like relax and enjoy herself, most likely because she was monitoring him. That kind of dynamic is going to be really difficult for relationships. It's common, it's very normalized in our society, and I'm not saying that their relationship is doomed or anything like that. But I think we have to be really careful about putting their relationship up on a pedestal like we are, because there's definitely some signs that that relationship isn't quite as healthy as I think that we are trying to pretend like it is. Kylie seems like she's the eternal mother, and Jason seems like he's another child of hers. Again, he's getting put up on a pedestal as like the ultimate girl dad. The fact that he like grabbed some of the kids from the audience and like had them wave at Taylor, like it's all sweet, it's adorable, and I get that. Part of the problem is being a great dad is not necessarily being another kid, and I think that in our society now, we tend to put like grown men who act like children as being like, oh, he's such a great dad because he's playing with the kids, but yet like, is he also able to handle being the masculine structure, or is he putting the masculine structure all on his wife so he gets to be like the fun parent and she has to be like the disciplinarian? Because that's a very common dynamic we have in our society, and for most women that's going to wear on us. Like I think a lot of women are just conditioned to think that that's the way it's supposed to be. That's not really our nature. Like that's not really what we're supposed to be doing as adults. Like you want to have a man who's not cruel. Like you don't want a man who's going around and like, you know, disciplining his kids like harshly, or, you know, treating his kids poorly, or disciplining his kids out of ego or something like that. But like you need to know that you have a man in your life who actually can be the adult leader in the family, so that you don't have to always be the one that's enforcing the discipline. I know too, and again, it's kind of like it's like funny banter, and I think it's relatable to a lot of people. But even when, you know, Kylie has like, she's made comments about like not leaving Jason too long alone with the kids by himself. Well, she's probably with the kids by herself a lot. Like she can handle all three, but like he can't handle all three at the same time. And she made a comment one time that like literally like it, oh my God, it like hit me right in the heart, where she said that Wyatt, their oldest daughter, said to her mom, like she was going out for a short time and she was like, I'll keep an eye on him. And I was just like, oh my God, because as a daughter who had to parent her father, I felt that. Like she's little, like she's a little girl, and even she knows at that point she's got to keep an eye on her dad, because her dad's kind of another kid. But they call it kind of like, I think like firstborn daughter syndrome or something, where the firstborn daughter tends to have to grow up so fast because she has to kind of become the adult, the one in charge, which is why I'm kind of curious if Kylie is a firstborn daughter. I couldn't actually find that information online, so I'm not sure, but she has that personality. And as if like Wyatt's gonna pick up that personality from her mom. And it's cute to talk about, it's a common dynamic, but it also like really hurt my heart, because I was just sort of like, oh my God, this little girl's gonna be forced to grow up way too fast, and she's probably gonna end up in a dynamic too where she ends up with a guy who is basically another big kid, and she has to now sort of mother him. It's a very common dynamic. It's cute to talk about and everything, but it's also kind of like okay, if this woman does not feel comfortable leaving all of her kids with the father of their kids, and I'm not saying he's not a good dad or he's not an involved dad or anything, but you gotta kind of ask yourself, like, is he a father we should be putting up on a pedestal if he's not someone who can even like actually like take care of all of his kids at the same time? And I think we need to stop normalizing the behavior of the dad just being another kid. Again, I'm not knocking them. I'm not saying that like their relationship is doomed or anything like that, but we got to be really careful about glorifying this situation. Are they like, you know, a cute couple? Are they entertaining? Is Jason entertaining? His personality is entertaining? Of course. I think Kylie seems like a very lovely, genuine person. I'm not knocking them, but putting their relationship up on a pedestal is dangerous, because that kind of dynamic is so common now. I get why they're so relatable. Those are the relationships where the mother, the wife, ends up getting burnt out because she just can't do it anymore, because she's just tired of always having to be the only adult, you know. And I do get that he's obviously a great provider for his family, and that's a great thing, and I'm not knocking that at all. Do I think he wouldn't fiercely protect his family? Absolutely. You need to be really careful about the dynamic where you have the dad that is just another kid, because that always ends up wearing on the mom, because she now has to become a mom to not just her own kids, but to her husband as well. And then I think that usually causes tension, because then again, you have like the husband who's like, I'm not asking your permission, because he then kind of starts to turn into like the stubborn, like, you know, stubborn teenager or stubborn toddler, depending on his maturity level, of like, you can't tell me what to do. And that's gonna make her feel even more unsafe because it's like, okay, I feel like I need to control him. Also, another little thing I'm gonna note, as of filming this, Jason has not announced whether or not he's retired or not. I do know that apparently other seasons he's said that he thought he might retire and then he decided not to. I've seen a lot of people talk about they believe that he's promised his wife he'll retire and acting as if like Kylie's just desperately waiting for him to retire and he doesn't want to. And I know that there was a lot of drama around of whether or not Tom Brady was going to retire and if that was the reason why Tom and Giselle broke up. And what I'm about to say is not really specifically about Tom and Giselle. I have another video talking about them, or even, you know, Kylie and Jason, because I don't actually know what their specific conversations have been around retirement. But I do think that there is an image in our society that some of these wives are just like desperately waiting for their husbands to retire. I want to note that, for one, I mean, I realize that sports athletics is a unique career and it takes up a man's time in a somewhat of a unique way. It's not necessarily like a 9-to-5 job. But the reality is if you have a man in your life, in your relationship, that is living a purpose, like he has a you know, something he goes out into the world and that he does that takes him away from his family. Hopefully it helps provide for his family, but he has like this purpose in life. Well, I mean, most men don't retire from that like in their 30s or even in their 40s. So this idea that so many of these like athletes' wives are like desperately waiting for their man to retire is kind of like, well, if he was working a regular job, he probably wouldn't be retiring until he was, you know, in his 60s or even 70s. And provided that the wife has a great support system around her, wouldn't necessarily mean that she was like desperate for him to retire. And especially when we're talking about these pro athletes, especially when we're talking about someone like Giselle or something, like she financially was in a position where she had help with the kids. She was not doing it on her own. In someone like Kylie's situation, apparently she's got like a really good family system around her. So like these are not women who are just like out on their own doing things alone, so that they're like, oh my god, I need my husband to be home because I can't do this on my own type of thing. I can understand if a woman is in a position, you know, with her husband where it's just sort of like it's her with the kids, she's got no help and he's gone a lot because of his work or something. I can see where that would be a different situation. But one thing I don't think that we talk about very much is the fact that, and this can go for any male, typically this is much more common in men, when a man retires, particularly if what he's retiring from is something that is his like genuine purpose, like not if he just had a job that he just went to because he was trying to earn a living, you know, and he was just like counting down the days to retirement. But if a man has a job that was like truly his passion, his purpose, the moment that he retires is usually a major transition point for a man. And very often it can lead to a lot of mental health issues, a lot of like an identity crisis. It can usually be a very tricky transition for any man, particularly one who felt very defined by his career. This idea that women are like waiting for a man to retire, because I think in our society, women will start fantasizing like when he retires, then everything will be great. You need to be careful about putting a man's retirement up on a pedestal like that, because for most men, retirement is a shift in them that can oftentimes go very wrong. Men tend to have a much higher rate of depression because they feel like they don't have as much of a purpose. And I'm not necessarily saying that a man should feel that way when he retires, but it's very common in men. So I think oftentimes, particularly when you have like athletes, because their retirement tends to be at a younger age, and I'm sure that somebody like Jason or even Tom Brady or any of these guys, like if they do have a plan, which many of them do, but a man's gonna need to have a plan after retirement for what his life is going to be. And it's better that he has that plan before he goes into it. Because oftentimes if a man goes into retirement without having a structured plan, and just being home and taking care of the kids and taking care of the family is probably not gonna be his purpose. Like a man can absolutely love his family and want to be an involved parent, and I absolutely think that's important. But for most men, just being home and taking care of the family is not gonna be enough of a purpose. He's going to need to feel like he's going out into the world and bringing something more to the world. And if he doesn't have a plan for what that's going to be after he retires from, you know, whatever his purpose has been up to that point, that's the time when you're going to find guys who sink into depression, who oftentimes their health will decline, physical health primarily because their mental health is declining. It's a very risky time. It can put a serious strain on relationships. So what I'm seeing right now is there's a lot of women who have this kind of like fantasy idea. I'm not saying that like Kylie's thinking this or anything like that. Like, what I'm seeing in the media is the discussion about Jason and his retirement is women having this glorification of like when a man retires, or like the idea of like having a man home all the time to help to take care of you. Most women, as much as I do know there are a lot of women out there that want their man home more to help them more, if you had your man home all the time at your beck and call to do whatever you wanted him to do, and to basically just take care of the home and to just be like a house husband or something like that, like most of you would go insane. Like I think a lot of women think that that's a good idea. That dynamic, probably not going to be healthy in the long run. As a woman, you're going to lose respect for him. Most women are not going to respect a man who's just like a house husband. If you're a feminine woman and you are, you know, you're kind of like, I want more of my husband, or you want more help, or you want more of something. If you got that all the time and too much, you would start to be like, this is too much. And I've mentioned this in other videos, but I want to make a note of this. I dive into this deeper in some other videos, so I won't go into this too much. But being an involved like partner, husband, father is not about how much time a man is home or how much time a man is like around his family. It's about the quality of the time that he is there. So a man showing up fully present and fully there with his family is more valuable than a man just being there for a longer period of time. So like if a father spends like say 5 minutes of full focused attention with his partner or his child or something, that is going to be worth more than like 5 hours of him just like being there but like his mind is somewhere else. I don't want people to get too caught up in, oh, I want him here more, I want him here more. Typically what a woman or a child or something is asking for when they want their you know, father or their partner to be there more, they want his presence there more, they want his full attention there more. And most people, children or, you know, women partners, are going to value focused presence and attention, like a man fully being there, more than a man being there for a long period of time when he's not really present and he's not really there. So I think we need to focus a little bit less on the quantity of time that a man spends with his partner or his family, and more on the quality of the time that he spends with his partner or his family. I know I went on a ton of tangents here, and this was just kind of like a general football related thing. If you're watching this before the Super Bowl, I hope this kind of got you in the mood for football or something. Or if you're not a football fan, I hope you learned something about relationship dynamics and things like that. If you're watching this after the Super Bowl, who won? What'd you think? Did you think it was rigged? Did you not think it was rigged? What's it like to see into the future? Hopefully you enjoyed the Usher halftime show. If you have any thoughts on any of these topics, want me to expand on any of these topics, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I love to hear from you, and I love your video suggestions. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up, and be sure you subscribe to my channel. If you're interested in learning about your dark feminine energy, I have the Dark Feminine Energy Guided Journal available on Amazon. The link is in the description box below, along with links to masterclasses, online courses, all my social media accounts, so be sure you check those out. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.